Dan, if you would give some biographical lead up to how your attorney
I'll start with asking who's ever heard of it.
Yeah, absolutely. How are you most comfortable?
Looks right here.
Can you all turn and shift toward him? Then you won't have your necks. Yes, no problem.
Warn you, I have a noun recall problem. So sometimes the word will elude me while I'm thinking about it. I'm helping out. So how many have heard of the Jim Jones call? Most of you have not. Well, in the 70s, this group came from Milwaukee or somewhere and set up in Northern California. And it was led by a person that was of American Indian heritage. And he came from a Baptist background and he established himself quite well here. He had a ashram, if you want to call it an ashram, in San Francisco and one in Redwood Valley, which is just north of Ukiah. You know where that is? And he had his people very, very active in the political, doing good things politically. And for instance, he had a place, they call it the ranch, for boys who were mentally challenged. And part of my experience was I helped out there. And by the way, I learned something. The boys there were highly socially adept. They were easy to get along with, got along well with each other, and just that they couldn't do certain things is all. And I thought, oh, that's amazing. We should learn how to do that. And I had a girlfriend who joined there. And she brought a number of people, and she's very involved in the, not so much the political aspect, but helped out. She was a great actress. She is a great actress. And they would put on plays and so forth. But he was very, very well liked in San Francisco. All of it, like the mayor and everybody like that, because he did all his good works. Somewhere along the line, he lost whatever charisma. Well, he still had charisma, but he lost some of his powers. Because what happens if you have a little bit of the X quality, where you can communicate on levels that people don't understand, if you let it go to your ego, it goes away. So he tried to supplement this with drugs and pretty much destroyed him. And I learned out later that what he was doing was like, yeah, but what's happening behind closed doors? He was screwing whoever he wanted to screw, and he had people spying on each other. They were afraid to say anything negative for fear they would be up before Father. They called him Father. And he would dispense not just psychological, but physical pain on people that defied the code. And he was very concerned that the government was spying on him, which they probably were, but he got so paranoid, or maybe that was his goal all along, that he bought some property down in Ghana, that's in South America, and set up I don't know what they call it, but it was a camp. And the people that went there suddenly realized that they were trapped. They couldn't leave. And some of the people wrote to their congressman, and so the congressman and his aides flew down there, and they were shot to death at the airport as they were trying to leave. And then at that point, they dispensed poison to everybody, and the ones that wouldn't take them, they shot them. And over 900 bodies that the people that had to be taken care of. A few of the people escaped. I knew quite a few of the people that were there. And I think the lesson is that we're looking for a savior. We need to be careful because it's hard to tell when you say, you see something that you don't like and you say, well, that's just my ego and Father knows best. It's hard to discriminate what's real and what is unreal in what I would call the spiritual world. Everybody is a guru. Just be careful of gurus. I'm answering any questions you might have. Yes?
I've read some on the whole story of it. Now, did he set himself up as the way to the Savior, or was he viewing himself and teaching the people that he was, the way?
His people had both of those concepts. Some people thought he was God incarnate. You know? Anyway, I happen to know the person who made the Kool-Aid. You've heard in the news drinking the Kool-Aid? Well, what he did was they would have sessions where, to see if you were loyal, they would have a fake Kool-Aid drinking fest. And then one time it became real. But I lived in a cabin in Berkeley, and another cabin next door, some people were from Texas, and they brought this kid in who was strung out on drugs. So my girlfriend took him to Jim Jones, and they straightened him out, did a good job, made him a doctor. And he's the one that made the Kool-Aid. Of course, he also died down there too. And Jim Jones died. I think maybe he died of a gunshot. And the people in People's Temple that survived get together every year and sort of, I don't know what you'd say, celebrate or console or whatever, however they react to it. But they're a support group for each other. And I think they learned a lesson.
What kinds of things did you see when you were first attracted to the movement that seemed very real and very positive?
Well, all of the good social work that he did, like the ranch I was talking about, and they had a myriad of little programs, and all of his people voted in a block, so they were very powerful politically. But what I found out, I was curious, always curious, I found out they had echelons, like a concentric circle. Those for the public, those for the more inner group, and then the real core inner group. And when I saw that happening, I said, uh-oh, when you have to have the information in this manner, it's not good. So I don't know how much different it was from the Colt in Oklahoma, was it?
Oh, Waco?
The Waco, Texas.
That was an interesting one. Actually, there were people at Waco, Texas with David Koresh. How many of you have heard of David Koresh and the whole deal, the whole big deal with the people's, what do you call it, what they call themselves?
Branch Davidians.
The Branch Davidians, yeah. I saw on the news a gentleman who had just left the group before they all died in the compound. I recognized him because I sat next to him in Greek down in Sabbath School Room 2 here at PUC. Most of those people were Seventh-day Adventists that died.
I was just gonna clarify, just so everyone knows, the Branch Davidians were actually an offshoot of Adventism. Very loosely, but.
There have been a number. The Shepherd's Rod was another that was a big deal. The Branch Davidians had some connection with the Shepherd's Rod.
Shepherd's Rod was the Davidians, and then the extremists of the Shepherd's Rod became the Branch Davidians.
Excellent.
They're so prominent.
Was Branch Davidian?
Yeah, any of those branches, sectarianism, are just prominent.
Well, they were all, if you're familiar with Seventh-day Adventism, you would recognize a lot of the things that they were saying. They twisted things a bit, and they extended things. One challenge with cultic religion, and please don't misunderstand, when I say cultic religion, I don't mean dangerous cultic religion. That's just one kind of cultic religion. But one challenge with cultic religion is that there are absolute interpretations of Scripture and of a founder and the founder's statements. And there's a sense of taking everything potentially literally. And so the degree to which somebody is involved with a cult can sometimes be measured, can be thought of in terms of how much do you take literally the things that have been written and stated and interpreted and added, and how much of that do you take simply symbolically or figuratively, or recognize that somebody might have said something and then thought better of it and later said something different that supersedes that. But you always have some people who come along and decide that absolutely everything is literal. And it's hard to speak in religious terms, especially apocalyptic religious terms. Now what that means, the apocalypse is the idea of things kind of coming to a crucial head and having a big final shootout kind of a thing. I don't know if any of you ever saw that rather slapstick movie, Seven Psychopaths. Any of you ever see that one? There was a guy in there who was off of his nut, and he continued in the whole throughout the movie to be planning for a final shootout. And while there were people actually shooting at him, everybody who wouldn't take it the same way he did, he was saying, but it's the final shootout. And there's this sense sometimes when people are apocalyptic thinkers that if the apocalypse wouldn't occur in their life, it would be a disappointment. They're really wanting things to come to a head and sort of have the big lifeguard blow the whistle and say, okay, that's it, everyone out of the pool. And so they do what they can to make that happen. And when it doesn't happen, sometimes they precipitate it. They find a way to engineer something that they can experience as being the apocalypse.
Do you know if there's any specific reason as to why they push towards the apocalypse, or why they want that to occur in their lifetime? I don't know if that
know, sometimes people, I think, are in agony at the normal, bland relentlessness of life. It would be so easy sometimes if all 400 problems and things that you wish it would straighten out and never do, and then more and more and more, and there's finances and there's choices you made that you wish you'd made otherwise if you'd known better or been wiser, relationships that just should have gone one way and went the other. People, I mean, there's already people here among you in your early 20s that could already tell us about parts of your body that are never going to probably work the same as they used to again, you know? There's people here who probably already have a bad back, a trick knee. Some of you may even have had injuries or sicknesses so that you realize that even though you're as young as you are, you might be infertile. You've got experiences that are so traumatic that they still give you bad dreams and that sort of thing. Everybody has a chance to kind of accumulate stuff like that. And it becomes attractive to some people to think of just getting it all, all at once. It's a little bit like when you're nauseated and you just have been nauseated for 2 or 3 days, but never quite nauseated enough. And it's just the nausea, you try to lay down and then you're going, oh, gosh, I'd rather just throw up my toenails. And so you kind of find yourself looking forward to an experience that's heinous. And then you're kind of relieved when it happens. People stick their finger in their throat if they're nauseated long enough. And the existentialist philosophers, especially Nietzsche, speak of this condition of life as being very much like nausea. In fact, he wrote a work called Nausea. And he talked about people looking for a religious escape, using religion not for a positive, uplifting purpose, not a life-giving purpose, but a life-robbing purpose of serving as people's excuse, giving them an escape route. And he said that there is no escape. You're here, you're thrown into this. No, you did not ask to be here, and no one else did, but no one's telling you to stay either. So if you decided to just go ahead today and not kill yourself and just stick around, then quit making excuses and deal. And you have no excuses to make. So he criticized all of the escape valves and crutches and all of that stuff and said, just face it down.
Speaking of, like people going full apocalyptic and stuff, neither, since we're talking about the Branch Davidians and Jim Jones, from what I understand from my reading and people that I've talked to and stuff, neither of them were really at the point, like where they were suicidal yet, right? Because, both of them happened to be interventions by the government, because they put that into action because the senator or the congressman came,
Yes.
and they were like, oh no, he's figured us out, so we have to kill him, so we just go back and tell the government, and then, well, since we've killed him, let's kill everyone else.
Yes, same
And
thing
then
with the
The
Davidians.
Branch Davidians, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms was after them, and they're actually the ones who burned down the compound because they barricaded up outside, and
Yes.
it's up to debate who shot first, but then ATF actually ended up burning down the building, not on purpose.
Local law enforcement was concerned and wanted to be able to also investigate because of accusations that the leader was sleeping with everybody, no matter their age. And that, there's a crossover. There's a crossover in people's brains between their spirituality and their sexuality. And I don't think any group ever escapes that. There's there's a long history of people fantasizing about sleeping with the Pope, for instance. You know, it's just like an otherworldly fantasy. And I consider it unlikely that, even though it's offensive to conservative Christianity, I think that divorcing the earthy parts of ourselves, the real human parts of ourselves, from the Christian narrative is actually very pagan and very much what Jesus was railing against with people. Jesus demonstrated the sacredness of humanity. And even though it's really an objectionable idea, I think that people probably experienced Jesus and were very confused in how to deal with him in their emotions. You know the statement that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. If somebody worships you, then the latent part, the residual part of us, which always is, to one degree or another, using other people, thingifying other people, looking at other people for how we can use whatever we can get from them, or use them to use for our own, as means to accomplish our own project. Which is another thing that the existentialist philosophers criticize heavily, was using people as a means to an end instead of considering people the end.
That actually brings up a question which actually might be very personal, and that's actually for Bruce. How many people do you know who are part of the Jim Jones experience who are no longer with us today?
20.
Is everyone,
Well, some of them I knew before, and some of them I met there. And I would say half and half. And some of them I know lost their children. And when I say they survived,